So, today, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to talk about how to face the Qiblah. Yani, this is fiqh lesson, but it is still mixed with the issue of refutation here. This book is a book of rudud, refutation. And the author says, how to face the Qiblah. So, some people were ignorant. Yani, that means they lacked knowledge. It's not a bad thing per se to not know something. You're gonna not know something. So some people, they were ignorant. So they asked the question, how do we face the direction as Allah commanded? Yani, what is the proper religious way for determining the Qibla? So that's a fair question. That's a fine question. So their ignorant leaders told them, this was their answer for them. Figure out the shortest way to get there and face that way. Face the shortest way. So they said, okay. And then they put a string over glue and they said, look how the string goes northeast. So they convinced their followers that the shortest route over a curved surface is the direction to face. What's the direction to face? The direction to face is the direction of the Kaaba from where you are. Wherever you might be on the earth, listening or existing. They convinced their followers that the shortest route over a curved surface is the direction. That is the direction to face. And they fooled themselves into thinking that one can go from northeast to southeast without changing direction. They fooled themselves into thinking that one can go from northeast to southeast without changing direction. Yeah, they they believe that. They're going to say, yeah, you can go from northeast to southeast without changing direction. Because, brother, the earth is not flat. But north and south are opposite directions. East is one direction. So we have here northeast and we have here southeast. They're going northeast, they're ending southeast because there's a great curve. There's a turn they are doing. They say that looks like only a turn. That looks like a turn, but really it's not a turn. It's just that the earth isn't flat. So, uh, what do you say to some talk like that? You say to this, honey, first, what we have here. Northeast versus southeast. To go from northeast to southeast. Okay, east is common between these two, but north is opposite of south. Yani, north is on the left side of east, and south is on the right side of east. If you were facing east, then north is on your left and south is on your right. So if you were going northeast, traveling northeast, and then somehow where you ended up was southeast from where you started. You started at one point. You went northeast from that starting point and ended up southeast from the starting point. You left going northeast from the starting point and ended up southeast from the starting point. It means you turned. So they're going to say, no, you didn't turn. It's just the world isn't flat, brother. So that's one thing you say. You say to that person, well, but north is to the left of east and south is to the right of east. So you're the one who said going one direction without turning, without going right or left. And also, this is not a, a one straight direction because you're not reading the map. You're just looking at a line on a ball. So I hope that's all clear for you. Okay, so instead of that, yani, all that incorrect stuff there, memorize this quote of Imam an-Nawawi. Although many who face northeast, yani many who, let's say instead of face, many who argue, many who argue for northeast have no respect for the fuqaha. We've been talking about that. That's something to keep in mind when you're talking about Qibla, that you're going to maybe, if yani, this issue of northeast Qibla, you're going to maybe not unlikely talk to a person who has no regard for scholars and maybe no regard for hadiths also. So instead of that stuff up there, memorize this quote from Imam an-Nawawi. He said, وَمَنْ أَمْكَنَهُ عِلْمُ الْقِبْلَةِ حَرُمَ عَلَيْهِ تَقْلِيدُ وَالْإِجْتِهَادِ. There's a footnote here. If you meet a northeaster who disregards the scholars of law, and yet he argues for a northeast prayer direction, do not detach the scholars like an-Nawawi from your argument for his sake, like what some people do. They say, yeah, well, when I want to debate with a person, I want to understand his perspective and then argue with him from his perspective. I think that's most likely is not a good idea in any circumstance. In any circumstance, you want to argue according to Islamic principles, not according to that other person's way. If you are talking to a person who doesn't have any regard for the scholars about the Qiblah, don't detach them for his sake and say, all right, well, I'll argue with you without talking about the scholars. Rather, shame him for speaking about the religion without knowledge and for not taking from the scholars as per his obligation. Don't say, you don't take from the scholars? All right, I'll talk to you about the Qibla your way. No, you say, what? You don't take from the scholars? Oh, man, you're on some nut stuff. What do they say these days? That's goofy. You on some goofy stuff. You. All right, so that's what you do. So here's the quote of Imam an-Nawawi that you can memorize. It's just a few lines. وَمَنْ أَمْكَنَهُ عِلْمُ الْقِبْلَةِ حَرُمَ عَلَيْهِ تَقْلِيدُ وَالْإِجْتِهَادِ. Anyone able to know the Qibla is forbidden from imitating and forbidden from ijtihad. You're able to know the Qibla for yourself, like you can see the Kaaba with your own eyes, then you cannot imitate someone else's prayer direction, nor can you make a determination. You cannot make an ijtihad. If you can see the Kaaba, you don't say, okay, here's the Kaaba I can see. Let me now use the North Star to determine where the Qibla is. So that's meaningless. So if you are able to know the Qibla, know, yani, such as seeing it with your eyes, then it's forbidden for you to imitate anyone. Rather, you're going to face the direction that you have come to know by seeing the Kaaba with your own eyes, for example. And you cannot make an ijtihad if you can see the Kaaba. النووي says, وَإِلَّا أَخَذَ بِقَوْلِ ثِقَةٍ يُخْبِرُ عَنْ عِلْمٍ. Otherwise, one takes the word of a trustworthy person informing him about what he knows. Otherwise, yani, if you cannot know the Qibla by seeing it, for example, then you take the word of a trustworthy person. Then you take the word of a trustworthy person informing you about what he knows. Even if that trustworthy person is a slave, or even if that trustworthy person is a woman, meaning a trustworthy slave says, I see the Kaaba, it's like this. Or a trustworthy woman says, I see the Kaaba, it's like this, face this way. Then you face that way, and you don't make your own determination. فَإِنْ فُقِدَ وَأَمْكَنَ الْإِجْتِهَادِ حَرُمَ التَّقْلِيدِ. If that were lacking, so you don't have a trustworthy person telling you which way to face because he sees the Kaaba, for example. You don't see the Kaaba yourself, nor do you have a trustworthy person telling you about what he sees. Then, in فُقِدَ, if that were lacking, وَأَمْكَنَ الْإِجْتِهَادِ, and ijtihad is possible, let's say it that way, and ijtihad is possible, then imitating or mimicking is forbidden. What's mimicking? Like when you, as a Muslim, you say, there's a masjid, let's go in there. And then you go in there and you see whatever way the people are praying, and you just face that way, and then you pray. That's imitating. and that's invalid, your prayer is invalid. Or you're traveling, and then you stopped at one of the stops on the highway where people, use the bathroom or take a nap for a while, and you found some Muslims praying there, and so you just said, "Oh, mashallah, there's some Muslims," and then you just ran over and joined them without any checking of the Qiblah. This is imitating, and this is invalid as long as ijtihad itself is possible on your part. فَإِن فُقِدَ وَأَمْكَنَ الْإِجْتِهَادِ, if that were lacking and ijtihad is possible, حَرُمَ التَّقْلِيدِ, imitating is forbidden. Yani, before you join that congregation in any of the scenarios I just painted for you, you're going to make your own determination. And if you see that they are facing what agrees with your determination, then you can join them in prayer. So that's clear, inshallah ta'ala. But we have some elaboration. This quote spells out one's first steps in facing his prayer direction. And this is Imam An-Nawawi. 1. If you have knowledge of the Kaaba's location by seeing it, for example, you can have knowledge by more than seeing. But let's just say seeing to keep it easy for ourselves. I'm putting, for example, just for the sake of the religious judgment here, and for practicality, we're just going to say seeing. If you have knowledge of the Kaaba's location by seeing it, for example, then you may not use any other means to face it, not the word of another, nor a determination by using the likes of the stars or shadows. So I think that's clear. 2, if you cannot achieve knowledge of the Kaaba because you cannot see it, or you don't have any other way to know also, then before making ijtihad by the sun and the stars, etc., take the word of a trustworthy person who informs you about his seeing the Kaaba. And he's not informing you about his own ijtihad. This is important. Understand it well. Don't take the word of a person who's informing you of his own ijtihad. When you are at the level of a person who has to make ijtihad, yani, you don't take the word of a person who informs you by his own ijtihad unless you're a mimic, unless you can validly imitate. Number 2 is you take the word of this trustworthy person, and what is he telling you? He's telling you about what he sees, not telling you about his own determination. So number 2 here is not when you go to someone's house, and in his house he's a good Muslim, and that's a good Muslim family. But number 2 here is not that you went to the house of this good Muslim family, and then you say to him, which way is the Qiblah? Yeah, and you say uh, to the man of the house, for example, which way is the Qiblah? And he says like this. And then you just face the way he tells you like that. That's not here, number 2. That's number 4. That's imitating. And that's not valid if you're a person who can do number 3, make your own determination. Number 2 here is not this scenario of being in someone's house and he tells you about his own determination in his house. Yani, he lives in your town, neither of you can see the Kaaba, you're on the other side of the ocean, for example. So that's not valid. What you're going to do in that person's house, the house of this good Muslim family, you're going to still make your own determination. So number 2 is if you cannot achieve knowledge of the Kaaba because you cannot see it, then before you make ijtihad, before you make your own determination, you take the word of a trustworthy person who tells you about what he can see. Not tells you about his own determination, he tells you about what he can see. He says to you, I see the Kaaba, for example, face this way. Then that's what you do. Then number 3, if you do not have knowledge of the Kaaba by seeing it, that's number 1. You don't have number 1. Nor are you informed by a trustworthy person who sees it. So you don't have number 2. Then you go to number 3. Make your best determination. Make your best ijtihad. Okay, you make your best ijtihad. We have a footnote here. When you make ijtihad somewhere, because you couldn't see the Kaaba and you didn't have a trustworthy person who could see it, telling you which way to face, then you have to make ijtihad every single time in that place. You do not have to repeat the ijtihad in that place where you made ijtihad unless you forgot the prior one. Once you make ijtihad in one place, you don't have to make it again there, like in your house. Unless you forgot the ijtihad that you made, like that good Muslim's house. You made ijtihad in his house. Then you came back another time after a long time, you forgot which way. Now you must make ijtihad again. But if you made ijtihad there before and you remember your ijtihad there at that house, then you can just face that way without making a new ijtihad. And if you ever change your ijtihad, so you made an ijtihad for your Qiblah, and then in the same location you made another ijtihad and you came up to a different answer now. Now, do you have to make up your prayers? You do not have to remake the prayers. Why? Because this is a rule here. Here's a rule. Because ijtihad does not invalidate ijtihad. Because ijtihad does not invalidate ijtihad. When you made ijtihad the first time, could you see the Kaaba? No, or else you wouldn't have made ijtihad. So when you made ijtihad the second time, could you see the Kaaba? No. So then second ijtihad is not going to invalidate the first one. So you don't have to make up those prayers. Remember, when you are making ijtihad, just by virtue of the fact that what you are doing is ijtihad, it means you acknowledge for yourself a room for error. Because you can't see the Kaaba. That's just like when the mujtahid makes ijtihad from the Quran or the Sunnah for a religious answer. Is there an ayah that explicitly gives the answer? No, or else he wouldn't be making ijtihad. Is there a hadith, authentic hadith, that explicitly gives the answer? No, or else he wouldn't have been making ijtihad. So then he does not have a definitive proof about the exact answer. Just like you, person, Kaaba, you do not have definitive evidence of the exact degree of this Kaaba when you don't see it. So the scholar who makes ijtihad from the Quran and the Sunnah because he doesn't have a definitive evidence, then he might make ijtihad a second time. When he makes ijtihad a second time, yes, yes, yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, what's an example of imitating? You just enter a masjid somewhere or musalla, and you just see which way the people pray, and then you just pray like that without checking anything. That's mimicking, and that's invalid unless you are a person who can validly mimic in this case. Who can validly mimic in this case, which we're going to say, like a blind person or a small child who can't make a determination for the Qiblah yet. Not normal, regular, able-bodied Muslim. It was his obligation. It was his obligation, his duty, to learn how to determine the Qiblah in the first place. He shouldn't have just been a Muslim spending all his years knowing he has to face a direction in his prayer wherever he is on the earth, and he never learned how to do so. That's negligence. Yeah, so that scholar who makes ijtihad from the Quran and the Sunnah, he comes to an answer. Is his answer definitively correct? Even for himself, he has room for error because he's making ijtihad. That's the nature of ijtihad. The nature of ijtihad is that your answer could possibly be wrong. So when you make a new ijtihad, does that invalidate the old one? No, because your answer still could be possibly wrong. So an answer that could be possibly wrong is not going to invalidate another answer that could be possibly wrong. An answer that was permissible to take is not going to invalidate another answer that's permissible to take. So I think that's clear. If that's not clear, let me know, please. So number three is if you don't have knowledge of the Kaaba by seeing it, nor are you informed by a trustworthy person who sees it, then you make your best determination. Yes. Yani, that's my obligation, and that's the obligation of that good Muslim that you went to his house. You have the same obligation. You don't take his word for it because it's his house. Rather, neither of you can see the Kaaba. That's why. Because it's his house doesn't make any difference here. And you only face ghalabatul dhann, your overwhelmingly confident conclusion of its direction. Overwhelmingly confident conclusion. Meaning it's not permissible for you to face less than or other than what you are most confident is right. And yani, any person who faces east in USA or Canada, because he doesn't want to face northeast, but he doesn't want to face southeast, I question his own personal confidence in what he's doing. And if he is facing a way that is not what he thinks, what he is most confident is most accurate, if he is facing a way other than what he is most confident about being accurate, it's not valid. It's not permissible for him to say, well, there's a saying about how much room for error, and there's a saying about yani the concaveness of the human face and what it means to face something, and that according to that saying, if I were slightly turned away from something, it still is falls under the contours of my face, and so I can face east because of a saying. None of this is going to work because all the Maliki school, the Shafi'i school, and the Hanafi school, we're going to see this quotes, they all said you must not face other than what you are most confident is the correct direction. So you can't say, for example, well, Yani, yeah, southeast, but according to the Fulanis, the face is contoured like this, or according to the Fulanis, there's the room for error that allows us to deviate like this. And the whole time you know that most accurately, though, it's south of east, then your prayer is not going to be valid. In fact, it is not valid to face anything other than what you are most confident about. We'll see the quote, inshallah. In the USA and Canada, the direction is certainly south of east. Yani, like we said, to varying degrees of south from North Canada to South Florida. Not all the same degree of south. So some person is going to try to make this to be your argument. Some person, his argument is that you want to face southeast 45 degrees south of east, 45 degrees east of south. And he wants that to be your argument so that he can refute this and tell you this is wrong. Yeah, I need to tell you that this one particular degree, it is wrong. So you need to clarify for him, this is not my argument. When I say southeast, just a broad term. Please understand. Understand what your opponent is saying to you. Don't formulate something and then argue that. Rather, understand what your opponent is saying and then argue with that. Argue with what your opponent is saying. Don't argue with what you formulated in your own mind. In the USA and Canada, the direction is certainly south of east without any room to be any degree of northeast in any way whatsoever. Why? Because I'm going to tell you the answer. You know the answer, inshallah. Because the North Star is higher in the USA and Canada than it is at the Kaaba. Intaha. Intaha means period. That's it. It's over. That's a wrap. End of discussion. So without any room to be any degree of northeast, yani north of east, from USA and Canada, in any way whatsoever. But the degree of south varies from northern Canada to southern USA. A person following this step cannot imitate another. You can only rely on another's. You cannot rely on another's Qibla determination. You must make your own Qibla determination. That's a universal rule of Ijtihad, which is that a mujtahid does not follow a mujtahid. It's a universal rule in Ijtihad. A mujtahid does not follow a mujtahid. Excuse me. That's not limited to the Ijtihad of the fuqaha, the mujtahids, the scholars who make Ijtihad from the Quran and Sunnah for religious rules. It's not limited to them. For example, you have two containers in a room. There are two of you and someone else. The two of you, you are somewhere, and there are two containers of water in another room. These two containers both are small amounts of water, not big amounts of water. Then a dog gets in there and he laps from one of the containers. And you don't know for sure which one. Whichever one he lapped from is now contaminated and you cannot use it for purification. So the two of you investigate the situation. So you look and you see something, and then you determine that the dog lapped from container A. And the other one says, I determined that the dog lapped from container B. Then each one's going to make wudu from his own container, and now it's not going to be permissible for them to pray together. Yani, to follow the other, for one to follow the other. Because according to what each one is more confident about, the other one made wudu with contaminated water. The reason why you avoided that container is because according to you, it's contaminated. So how are you going to follow him in his prayer? This is the meaning of that the mujtahid cannot follow a mujtahid. And number 4, if you are unable to make an ijtihad because of being blind, or because of being a child not yet possessing the skill to make a proper determination, like you're just 7 years old, just started praying, only then may you imitate another. So that's when someone's going to take you by the shoulders, for example, and direct you and say, face this way. Then it will be valid. This is why, and now we also said, وَمَنْ عَجَزَ عَنِ الْاجْتِهَادِ وَتَعَلُّمِ الْأَدِلَّةِ كَالْأَعْمَى قَلَّدَ ثِقَةً عَارِفًا. Anyone unable to make ijtihad or to learn the Qibla references, like the blind, yani like a blind man, then anyone like that imitates a trustworthy, knowledgeable person. So inshallah, the 4 steps are clear. I hope that everyone listening took note of those 4 steps and you memorize those 4 steps very easy and say them to yourself here and there and every now and then to make sure it's in your own mind fresh. What's first step? Seeing the Kaaba. Then you don't use any other way to face it. What's second step? Being told by someone trustworthy who sees it while you don't see it. Then you take his word and you don't use any other way. What's third step? Making your own ijtihad because you lack definitive evidence of the Kaaba's direction because you can't see it. And the other person can't see it too. So you both have the same obligation. Neither of you can follow the other. If you come to the same direction, then you pray together. If you differ, then you don't pray together. That's not fitna. That's application of the rules. And level 4 is you can't make ijtihad because you're blind or you're just a little kid, too little to do it. Then you can imitate someone. Okay. Now let's take some more details. Sheikh Zakaria al-Ansari, rahimahullah, the massive Shafi'i, he adds a detail. فإن ضاق وقته عن الاجتهاد هذا من زيادة أو تحير المجتهد لظلمة أو تعارض أدلة أو غير ذلك. If there's not enough time to make ijtihad before the prayer time exits, so you're somewhere You need to make a determination. You are somewhere, you need to make a determination, and the time's going to run out. You can't make a determination before the time goes out. Or you are confused, you as the mujtahid, or one is confused due to darkness or conflicting Qibla proofs. If there's not enough time to make ijtihad before the prayer time exits, or one is confused due to darkness, yani you're in the nighttime, unfamiliar land in the nighttime, or due to conflicting Qibla proofs, yani you have, for some reason, one way makes you think it's one direction, but if you do it in another way, then it looks like the Qibla is another direction. And you can't seem to put these two together. You are somewhere and under some circumstance where you came up to two different directions. It's either this way or this way, and you cannot determine which way is the right way. You have conflicting Qibla proofs. You somehow found yourself in a circumstance of having conflicting Qibla proofs. أو غير ذلك, or some other reason. So let me repeat. If there is not enough time to make ijtihad before the prayer time exits, or one is confused, the mujtahid, the one who's making his ijtihad, is confused due to darkness, or yani like darkness or any other reason for not seeing the directions, like overcast. You're somewhere, you don't know where you are. Yani, you don't know the area. You're not familiar with the area. And there is overcast, I mean, just clouds in the sky, no sun, no shadows. You can't make any determination. So the time is tight. Or you were confused due to darkness, or the likes of darkness. Or only ta'arudi adillah, or you were confused due to conflicting Qibla proofs. أو غير ذلك, or some other reason. Then what do? صلى إلى أي جهة شاء للضرورة وأعاد وجوبا. Then one prays in any direction he wants for the necessity of praying on time. And then he repeats the prayer out of obligation later. When he determines his direction accurately, when he can make a proper determination, then he'll make up his prayer later. Right now, while you are confused and you don't know which way to face, because of darkness or because of conflicting Qibla proofs, or you just don't even have the time, or else you're going to miss the prayer, then you just pray in any direction. And then later on, you're going to make it up. What did Sheikh Zakaria say? فلا يقلد لقدرته على الاجتهاد ولجواز زوال التحير في صورته. One still does not imitate someone else's determination, even under these circumstances. Time is tight. He doesn't say, all right, which way you face? Or the time is tight. So you don't say, the time's tight. Which way you facing? I'm going to face the way you face. Or your Qibla proofs are conflicting. So you don't say, which way you face? Let me face the way you face because my Qibla proofs are conflicting. None of that. Sheikh Zakaria says, one still does not imitate another's ijtihad. فَلَا يُقَلِّدُ لِقُدْرَتِهِ عَلَى الْإِجْتِهَادِ, since he's able to make his own ijtihad. Meaning, you are a person of ijtihad. You are a person in the rank of ijtihad, in the ijtihad level. There's 4 levels. Ijtihad level is level 3. Level 1 is seeing the Kaaba. Level 2 is being told by someone trustworthy who can see it. Level 3 is making your own determination because you lack the first 2. And then level 4 is imitating someone else. As long as you are a person of level 3, lacking 1 and 2, you don't go to level 4. Even if you were confused about the Qibla in darkness, even if your Qibla references are conflicting. So let this then make you firm. Let this make you firm in not imitating another person, as long as you are one of the people who can make ijtihad. Why you can't even make ijtihad in this, even under these, I'm sorry, why can't you imitate someone even under these circumstances? Even under the circumstance of not having time, or being in darkness, or having conflicting Qibla proofs. Why is it you still can't imitate another? Sheikh Zakaria says, لِجَوَازِ زَوَالِ تَحَيُّرِ لِجَوَازِ زَوَالِ تَحَيُّرِ فِي صُورَتِهِ. Because of the possibility of that this person's confusion will go away. Because of the possibility of this person's issue clearing up for him, and then he can make his own ijtihad. So then you're just going to face anyway. Don't imitate the other person because the time is tight, or because you are in darkness, or because your Qibla references are conflicting. Rather, you pray in any direction and then you make it up later. That's the rule. That's Shafi'i school. That's Shafi'i school. Turning away from the Qibla intentionally invalidates the prayer. This is the rule also mentioned by An-Nawawi. إن استدبرها أو تحول إلى جهة أخرى عمدا بطلت صلاته. If one turned his back to it, to the Kaaba, or he turned to another direction intentionally, his prayer is invalidated. Yes. You have two scenarios here. One is that your back is to it. So that means you're in the complete opposite direction, 180 degrees, wrong direction. Now you're going to definitely repeat that prayer. You had your back to the Kaaba. You're going to repeat that prayer. Or you turn to another direction intentionally, meaning, okay, you can't see the Kaaba. So you do have room for error. Even in Shafi'i school, you still have room for error because you can't see the Kaaba and the religion is easy. So your duty is to face what you're most confident about. So if, when he says here, أو تحول إلى جهة أخرى عمدا, or he turned to another direction intentionally, it means he turned away from what he is most confident is the right direction. That's what it means. How we know that's what it means? Because he can't see the Kaaba in the first place here. So then, in this case of the one who can't see the Kaaba, then your anchor is your confidence. You must face the direction that you are most confident is most accurate. So, in tahawwala ila jihatin ukhra amdan, if he turns to another direction on purpose, batalat salatu, his prayer is invalidated. And here is the short answer for someone who claims that you are allowed to choose anywhere within a certain range or degree, especially if he claims to be a Maliki. Yani, I just gave you some Shafi'i references. Here's reference from Maliki school. From the famous Maliki manual, Mawahibul Jalil, which is a summary of a famous, not a summary, an explanation, which is an explanation of a famous Maliki summary called Mukhtasar al-Khalil. Mukhtasar al-Khalil. The summary of al-Khalil. So this is a book that is all the rave in the Maliki school. Has many explanations. Amongst those explanations is one called Mawahibul Jalil. So what's the statement that's in Mukhtasar al-Khalil? What's the statement that needs to get explained that's in Mukhtasar of al-Khalil in the Maliki school? He said, أصل وبطلت إن خالفها ولو صادف. Original text. The author said, one's prayer is invalid if he goes against his own determination, even if he were correct in the direction he faced. Yani, بطلت إن خالفها. One's prayer is invalidated if he goes against it. If he goes against what? If he goes against the Qiblah, according to him. We're talking about a person who can't see the Kaaba here. He goes against the Qiblah. His prayer will be invalid. What? Walau sadaf. Even if he were correct in the direction he faced. Yani, even if he happened to be facing the right way. He was most confident that the right direction is some way. And he went against that confidence to face another way. And in the process, he actually wound up facing the Kaaba. What's the judgment of his prayer according to the Maliki school? Batalat is invalid. الشرح, the explanation. يشير إلى ما نقله صاحب الذخيرة عن صاحب الطراز ونصه. So, in explanation, the author of the original text, he signals to what the author of Al-Dhakhira copied from the author of Al-Tiraz. Al-Tiraz. And the quote is, قال إذا أداه الاجتهاد إلى جهة فصلى إلى غيرها ثم تبين أنه صلى إلى الكعبة فصلاته باطلة عندنا وعند الشافعي وأبي حنيفة لتركه الواجب. What's that quote? If one's determination leads him to a direction and he prays in a different direction, and then it became clear that he actually faced the Kaaba, his prayer is invalid according to us. That's the Malikis. Aindana. According to us, we the Malikis, and according to Ash-Shafi'i, and according to Abu Hanifa, his prayer is invalid. لِتَرْكِهِ الْوَاجِبِ, for his leaving out the obligation. The obligation of facing what he is most confident is most correct. So any question here? Question. Conflicting Qibla proofs. What does that mean? Also, can you repeat about turning one's back? Yes. Conflicting Qibla proofs. Let's say, for example, you had two compasses, two checked compasses. Whenever you are out, you use both of them. You pull them both out, right hand, left hand, like you're a gunslinger. Two compasses. And they both give you the same reading every time. Then you found yourself somewhere, and you pulled out your two compasses, they both gave you two different directions. That's just an example. Yani, something that would point you to the Qiblah points you in one way, and something else that will point you to the Qiblah points you in another way, and you're unable to put them together. So you have conflicting Qibla proofs. Then, what do? You pray in any direction, and then you make it up later when you ascertain your direction. So first, is that clear? Okay. Second thing says, can you repeat also about turning one's back? Yeah. Turning your back, which means 180 degrees. You're facing the wrong way. You're facing 180 degrees away from the Kaaba. Your back is to the Kaaba. Then your prayer is invalid. So let's say, for example, you made Ijtihad in one place. Then you made another Ijtihad in the same place, just to find out that, oh snap, you actually prayed completely opposite direction. Now, yeah, you're going to make it up. Because it became clear for you that you actually made a blunder. That's clear? So how do I know the exact direction? By using the Qibla proofs. So the directions, there's four of them: north, east, south, and west. So the Kaaba is from you within these four directions. So how do you know? You say, Yani, you need to ascertain the answers to these two questions here. Does the sun rise at the Kaaba before it rises where I am? Yes or no? Is the North Star higher where I am than it is at the Kaaba? Yes or no? If you ascertain those two questions, the answers to those two questions, then you're going to have a rough general direction that you need to face. So you're going to say, okay, the sun rises at the Kaaba before it rises where I am. That means Kaaba is east of me. And North Star is higher where I am than it is at the Kaaba, means Kaaba is south of me. So my direction is southeast. Okay, that's rough though. Because is it east southeast? Is it south southeast? Is it due southeast? Exactly. Now you're going to face to your best ability. Because after what I have just now painted for you, the scenario I just painted for you, after that, people have different levels of expertise. The more of an expert you are, the more you're going to be able to pinpoint most exact direction. Your question? Okay, 1 second. Please. Your question says, how do I know the exact direction? So I have been now in this lesson repeating something very important that I hope is not missing you, which is you cannot see the Kaaba. That means you lack evidence for its exact 100% direction. You lack that. So your obligation is to face what you are most confident is the most accurate direction. Is it clear for you? And I'll repeat for you. I gave you the analogy of the scholars of Ijtihad, the mujtahids. They use the Quran and Sunnah to make Ijtihad to get an answer. So, did they have an explicit ayah in the Quran telling them the answer? If they did, then they have no business making Ijtihad. That's like if you were to see the Kaaba. Do you see the Kaaba? If you did, you have no business making Ijtihad. Did they have explicit authentic hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam giving them the answer? If they did, they have no business making Ijtihad. So when they lack the definitive evidence about the answer, that's when they make ijtihad. And since it is an ijtihad, that means that it's possible that there's a what? A mistake, right? Is it clear? Yes, an error. So inshallah it's clear for you. Alhamdulillah. Yes, brother, what's your question, please? Okay, yeah, I'll repeat for you. If a person made ijtihad to face a direction somewhere, then first, before I build on that, it means right then and there, since we're saying he made ijtihad, means there's possibly what? An error. Because he can't see the Kaaba in the first place. So he could be 1 degree off or 2 degrees off, for example, or more. And maybe he's not an expert. So he can get rough. He can get close. The best he can do, which that's going to be valid for him to do the best he can do. That's valid. That's your obligation. You might not be an expert here. So you did that. Okay. Then in the same place, you made another ijtihad and you got a different direction the second time. So do you have to make up the prayers that you prayed under the first ijtihad? No. Why not? Because as a rule, ijtihad does not invalidate ijtihad. Unless it were a situation that your back is turned to the Kaaba. Yes, but there's a rule here. The rule is not that your back was to the Kaaba. The rule is that ijtihad, what invalidates ijtihad, not ijtihad, what invalidates ijtihad is certainty. Certainty. So, if you made your second ijtihad, and then you found that you actually had your back to the Kaaba, then now you're certain you were wrong. That's why you're going to have to make it up here. Here you are certain you were wrong. Certainty invalidates ijtihad. In the other case, you made a new ijtihad in the same place, so maybe it just took you a few more degrees to the right or the left. 1 degree, 2 degrees, whatever. But ijtihad does not invalidate ijtihad. So, for example, a person said, the Kaaba rises, the sun rises at the Kaaba before it rises where I am. Therefore, I must face to the east. And he turns east right there. And he says, the North Star is higher where I am than it is at the Kaaba. So I must turn south. So he turns a little bit south right there. Look right of east. And then he prays. And then later on at the same place, he does another ijtihad. And he says, here I am now, 10 years later in this same place after I have traveled the world and I have used 20 compasses, big and small, pocket-sized compasses, big ship compasses. I became a Boy Scout master and I can read the North Star, everything. Now I got so much more expertise. Let me do my new ijtihad right here at the same spot. The sun rises at the Kaaba before it rises where I am. So I have east. And the North Star is higher where I am than it is at the Kaaba. So I have south. But now that I'm more of an expert, I can do a little bit more measurement here. So I know that the difference in elevation is such and such. So I'm going to compensate by turning a little bit more to the right. Towards the south from east? Now it's different from how I did the first time. My answer now is different from how it was first time, which in the scenario I'm giving you, both of them southeast. So does he have to make up his prayers from the first time? No, he does not. In both cases, he couldn't see the Kaaba. In both cases, he's still possibly not in the most accurate direction. Is that clear? So now we have another title, imitating another's prayer direction. You must not follow another's determination. We said so clearly already. Because like you, he does not see the Kaaba, so he lacks step one. And he also lacks the word of a trustworthy person reporting his sighting of the Kaaba, so he lacks step two. You cannot face someone else's conclusion, and he cannot face yours. You both have the same obligation. So how can you follow each other? You're both supposed to be doing the same thing, not following one. If one of you is following the other, then you're not both doing the same thing. If one of you, in this case, if one of you is following the other, then one of you is making ijtihad and the other one is imitating. But you both have the same obligation. You're both supposed to make ijtihad here, not one make ijtihad and the other imitate. If you cannot make ijtihad like a child or a blind man, only then can you imitate someone else's ijtihad. And only if he is trustworthy and knowledgeable. So not an ignorant person also. The occurrence of this Northeast tragedy makes the wisdom of this rule clear. Or else you're just going to step into any building, face Northeast, facing the wrong way without even checking. It is not valid for the one who can determine the Qiblah to just follow without checking the Qiblah references and making his own determination. Except, there is actually an exception to this, except anywhere the Prophet prayed, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then you can, if it's confirmed the Prophet prayed somewhere and the way he prayed is confirmed there, then you don't have to make ijtihad. You can just face the way the Prophet prayed. And except a masjid that is several centuries old, where centuries of scholars and jurists and perfectionists have prayed, several centuries old, 3, 4, 5, 6 centuries, and these scholars over the decades are coming to this masjid, seeing its Qiblah, facing that way and not objecting to it, then you can just, in such a masjid, step in there and pray without making your own determination. So, can you do that for a row home that was converted into a masjid about 10 years ago? No, you cannot. Were converted into a musalla about 10 years ago? Or 20 or 30 years ago? Or 40 or 50 years ago? No, you cannot. So such masjids are counted as verified. Such qiblahs in those old masjids are counted as verified. And then one can pray in such a place without making a determination. It was even said about the masjid, the Umayyad Masjid, Al-Masjid al-Umawi in Damascus, that Imam as-Subki, and he came centuries, he came centuries after this masjid was built. As-Subki is a mujtahid, according to some. Even if he's not truly mujtahid, he's still extremely high level because some think he's mujtahid or say he is mujtahid. As-Subki didn't agree with the qibla of that old masjid, very old masjid. So, wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this obligation includes every pubescent Muslim who can see and is able to learn the obligatory basics of reading the stars. And just looking at the stars, a few basic things. It's not difficult. Any illiterate person, any simple layman can learn what we are talking about. All it needs is for someone who knows to take him. Take him out at night, for example, and he'll say to him, okay, you see this star right there? That's the North Star. So face that way. You facing it? Yes. We face it together. Here, hold my hand. We face it together. Which way are we facing now? North, because that's the North Star there. And he would say to him, and look at the stars around it. See the pattern of stars around it? That's going to help you determine that that's the North Star right there. And then that simple layman is going to say, okay, it's not difficult. If you fit that description, Yani, someone who's pubescent and sane, Yani, you're not like retarded, so you can learn how to do this. Then you cannot blame your imam for you're facing the wrong direction. You can't blame your imam because you've been facing the wrong direction. Who are you going to blame? Are you going to blame? You're going to blame yourself. Are you going to justify? No, don't justify anything. Are you going to uh, make excuses for yourself? No, you're not going to. Don't do it. You're going to be responsible. Brothers and sisters. One might say there's a stereotype about women that they don't take responsibility. So that's a sister. She's gonna say, "No, it was the imam's fault. No, why? No." She's gonna say, "No, sister, it's your own fault. You're the one who didn't learn. It's your fault for yourself. What you did is your own fault." Or brother too. There's plenty of men who can't take responsibility. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه من العباد. Surely Allah does not take the knowledge by merely stripping it from the slaves. ولكن يقبض العلم بقبض العلماء. Instead, He takes the knowledge by taking the scholars, means by making them die. حتى لم يبق عالما, until He doesn't leave any scholar. And this could be in any place here. Not leaving any scholar remaining, it doesn't even have to be everywhere in the world, even in any location. If it were just throwing a word out there, Bangladesh, if there were no scholars around there, then it's going to be a very tragic situation for that area. اتخذ الناس رؤوسا جهالا. The people will take for themselves ignorant heads. فسئلوا, and those ignorant heads are asked. فأفتوا بغير علم, and they give religious verdict without knowledge. فضلوا, and they go astray, those who are answering. وأضلوا, and they mislead others.